I think you're muted, Beto. Oh, there you go.
There we go. I just didn't want all the ruckus of the. I enjoy the music. I like getting into the music, so we just make it nice and quiet. What's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great hump day. I guess today is hump day. We are down one today. We have Adriana. We have the Entertainment Talking Sports. Our buddy Anthony is a little under the weather. The Giants will make
Monday night.
I was gonna say they'll make anybody sick. So the fact that we were able to make it is good to go. But hope you guys' weeks are going great. I obviously have a big thing to watch after this tonight, and hope that they can survive again. Who has not been surviving are the New York Giants. They dropped to 2-6 in a. I guess they competed. I don't know what else to say. But anyway, I run out of expletives to talk about this team. So obviously, we'll start with that. We'll get your opinion on the game, what you saw. Adriana, ladies, always first. So let us know what you think about the game, and again, don't hold back. These guys deserve every bit of it.
I have to be honest. I was surprised because I went into that game being like, we're going to get absolutely murdered. Like, I really thought it was going to be a blowout, like 40-0 Cowboys game all over again. So the fact that it was tied at halftime, I was like, are they actually giving me hope that like maybe we're going to beat Mike Tomlin and this Steelers team? And then, it was all ripped out from underneath us, like it usually is. But I was surprised by the Tay Banks benching, because I just was like, if you're going to bench him, like, why didn't you do it last week? I don't care that we didn't have any other good corners to replace him. Like, it's about teaching these guys and teaching someone like him that there are consequences for your actions. And if you want to be lazy and you want to take plays off and you want to do it in front of everyone and do it so obviously, you get yanked immediately. So I thought it was odd this game. I was live streaming, so I was like, did I miss something? Like, did I miss a very obvious play? And then as I was like, went to the chat and everyone was like, no, I don't get it. And then I listened to Dable's presser, and I think it was either Dan Duggan or Ryan Dunleavy basically asked him the same thing. Like, I didn't see a very specific play where he looked like he was doing the wrong thing, being lazy, et cetera. And Dable, gave some BS Dable answer of like, we just felt like it was the right move at the time to switch things up. And, he's going to be the starter again next week and whatever. But I would say my biggest concern coming out of this game, because I want to see Dable have another year. And I know John Mara said he's going to have another year, but I'm getting really worried about this locker room. Yeah. And, when Jones is essentially kind of like not talking shit, but like you could tell he's visibly angry after the bizarre 2-point conversion situation. Then Dable basically throws him under the bus after the game with the strip sack from TJ Watt. And the way I felt was like, I think Daniel Jones deserves a lot of the blame. Don't get me wrong. But I felt like on that strip sack, like there are very few quarterbacks who are hanging on to that ball when TJ Watt is coming full steam at you and swatting it out of your hands. But then we find out later that Dable was like, well, Daniel basically fucked that up because he was supposed to tell Theo Johnson to move next to Illuminor, and he doesn't do it. So there's that. Then you've got Burns coming out and being like, some of these players need to grow up. You've got Tay Banks getting benched and taking off plays. So that's my biggest concern out of all of this. We know this is not the best football team. We know there's some good pieces to it. I think overall they're going to be in good shape next year when they have a good draft under their belt. I feel like they're really getting there. And this season, it is what it is. Would I have liked them to win? Yes, I want them to win. I'm not on board with the tank. But I'm also at the point where like they're probably going to keep losing. And I'm also okay with that because it'll get us a better quarterback. So I wasn't like wildly pissed off after the game, I guess. I'm just at the point now where I'm like, I'm starting to feel like I don't even think Dable is going to make it through this season. Forget about what John Mara said. But if this stuff keeps happening between him and Jones, Jones in the presser calling him Dable instead of coach and like these little sorts of things, I'm like, this is not looking good.
Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like you, I went into the game. I don't know about 40-0, but I went into the game thinking that it was very low probability the Giants were even going to stand a chance to win. Actually, very similar to the Seahawks game this year where they stunned me and they ended up winning. I thought they were going to get killed going into Seattle, and obviously that shocked me. So it was similar in that aspect. Yeah, the first half was encouraging. We couldn't get in the end zone. A lot of that having to do with penalties. We had a delay a game at the 15-yard line. We had a pre-snap motion penalty on Malik Neighbors, which was questionable at best. But that's the other thing that really stood out to me in this game. And I get it, you're on the road, but I think back to the Seattle game. It's one thing I pointed out. I remember live streaming the game with Bad Dog during the game. I had to double and triple check after the game to make sure I was right. The Giants in that game, in a harsh environment in Seattle, didn't commit one pre-snap penalty the entire game. So I credited Dave with that. I said, wow, they were so prepared for that game going into a harsh environment. It was the complete opposite this week. You go into Pittsburgh, you commit 11 penalties. It felt like 40, like so many crucial pre-snap penalties in spots where it couldn't happen. From a positive standpoint, they ran the ball really well. The run blocking was great. And I thought they schemed the run scheme in general. Like the holes were gigantic off the left side. That was working really well. Tyrone Tracy looked great. Pass protection we knew was going to struggle, especially obviously with Andrew Thomas out, and we got our backup left tackle in the game. Evan Neal can't even start over the backup left tackle that we got off the street. So you got to continue to be pissed off as a Giants fan with that. Joe Shane just drafted this guy 7th overall 2 years ago. He can't even start over the backup. So that's annoying. Obviously, some key drops, Malik Neighbors, Daniel Jones. Like you said, Adriana, during the game, I was like, I live streamed the game as well. And during the game, I'm like, you can't really fault Daniel Jones for that fumble because he couldn't react. He blindside. It's Watt. But then you find out after the fact when Dable, like you said, kind of throws him under the bus. And then Daniel reiterates it during his press conference that he should have slid the protection over. And Eli actually said it. I saw the clip after the fact. Well, he was live streaming the game on ESPN. He's like, you got to get the tight end over there. Like even he saw, thinking about it from a quarterback's perspective. And I actually thought Jones, before that point, actually played a really good game. I wouldn't necessarily call it a great game, but a really good game. I thought he played well overall. And then in the end, in typical Daniel Jones fashion, when the game's on the line, when the chips are on the table, he's got a guy wide open over the middle. He throws into double coverage, interception, game, set, match. But I'm at the point now, guys, where I'm not even like, I don't even critique Daniel Jones anymore. I don't get upset about Daniel Jones. We know Daniel Jones is not going to be here. Like you were kind of saying with Dable, that's the thing that bothers me more. The team didn't look prepared. The 2-point play, it looked like a peewee football play. And I get it. It's something that you practice every week and you want to bring it out in the right opportunity. Then I get the analytical thing. You go for 2, so you get another opportunity. If you don't get it, you give yourself a chance to win if you score in the next drive with an extra point if you convert. I get all that. I would have preferred the extra point, but I'm not going to kill him for that because I get the analytics to it. I understand that. But the play call was awful. Like, what were you thinking? And that was a play that clearly was disrupted because they couldn't communicate well. Like, everybody looked like they were not in sync. Like, it looked like the center snapped the ball too early. Jones wasn't ready for it. The offensive line wasn't ready to block. That was all on the left side. If you're going to run a play like that requires extra communication, being that the offensive line is like 20 feet away from the quarterback, maybe don't pull it out for the first time on the road in Pittsburgh in the end zone with 80,000 screaming fans. I think it's very fair at this point to be very critical about some of the things that Brian Dable has done. Like you said, I don't want to fire the guy. I really don't want to fire the guy. But I'm not in love with what I've seen this year.
Yeah. Where to even begin? I'm going to begin with the left tackle. I, for the life of me, don't understand why they're not trying Evan Neal over there. You picked the dude 7th. He played left tackle at Alabama. You can't tell me that he can be worse than Azudu or Hubbard. You can't possibly tell me Evan Neal is worse. He might be as bad, but shouldn't you at least try? What the hell are we doing with that guy? I mean, if he plays really well, you might have your swing tag. You might be able to trade him because he's always not going to come back here either. They're not going to pick up a 50-year option. He's not going to be a Giant. So you might be able to get some value for him. Why don't they? You got nothing to lose. You're 2-6. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares at this point? Why wouldn't you give him a shot? The other two guys suck over there. And Daniel Jones getting killed because of it. The offensive line seems to fall apart because there is no Andrew Thomas there, which I understand he's a big loss, but the whole line should have just shut down. As far as the sliding the protection goes, I don't know how many times I've talked about when people are like, oh, the offensive line sucks and Daniel Jones, and that's why this. And I understand that the offensive line has been a problem, but I've said this a million times. My biggest problem with Daniel Jones is the inability to read the defense pre-snap. These blitzers come free because he doesn't slide protection, because he doesn't know where it's coming from. He can't see that. He doesn't go through progressions. Chris, to your point, he threw it a double coverage with a wide open guy. We saw it against Cincinnati, the same thing. He had two guys that were wide open on 4th down. He throws it into the guy that's covered. Yes, I get it. Daniel Jones isn't completely at fault. And people that want to protect him and they want to defend him say, well, there's other people. Why are you just always shitting on Daniel Jones? Well, he's the quarterback, number 1. He gets paid the most money, number 2. And because he's a big part of it. All you got to do is look at how bad Washington was last year. Oh, they got a quarterback. Oh, what do you know? Look at the Bears. Oh, look at they got a quarterback. Look at what it does to a team, right? And I'm not saying that the Giants are going to be able to find a Jayden Daniels or a Caleb. You're not going to find a Caleb because Caleb's generational, in my opinion. But it rejuvenates a team. Regardless of if this is Daniel Jones' fault, if it's the Lions' fault, if it's Shane's fault, Mara's fault, Dable's fault, the fact of the matter is this isn't working. And you have to have a divorce. At some point, it's better for both parties. Brian Dable don't like Daniel Jones. I don't think he's ever liked Daniel Jones, if I'm being completely honest. It's not his quarterback. And I think the fact that they kind of got stuck in a bad spot and they were not able to sign Barkley, and they kind of were forced into signing Daniel Jones. I don't think that sat well with those guys, which is why they structured the contract the way they did in case he did end up regressing and we couldn't win games. They could get rid of him after 2 years, as opposed to if he progressed and got better off 2022, you'd have a bargain right now.
And you'd look like a genius. You'd be the guy that fixed Daniel Jones.
So, I understand when you're losing, the biggest concern is losing the locker room. That's a big deal. That's why Ben McAdoo was gone in 2 years, even though he made the playoffs his first year. 2 years later, or the next year he was gone. Joe Judge was terrible, and he lost the locker room. And running back-to-back quarterback sneaks isn't going to do yourself any favors. I don't want Dable gone. I think that if you keep flipping GMs and you keep flipping, you're never going to have any consistency. You're never going to have any structure. You bring in a new GM. You bring in a new coach, they're going to want different players. You're going to have to do this thing all over again. And we've seen this vicious cycle since the end of Jerry Reese's tenure here. It's tough to watch the Giants. It really is. And to Adriana's point, again, I'm at the point where I don't care. I really don't. I'm at the point this year where I'm like, they get to a certain point, I'm going to actually root to say, just flush it. Just lose them all. I'm dead ass serious. Just lose them all. I was talking to Louis T today. He tells me, because, Washington's got a quarterback, and look at them, they're 6-2. He told me, Bad Dog, he goes, that's called running the play. You know what I'm talking about. He's talking about tanking. And somebody asked me there, what's the biggest difference from what Dable did in 2022 and what he's doing now? I said, well, I think the play calling is limited because of the quarterback. When teams adjusted to what the Giants did, Brian Dable going to do so much with what he has. And I'm sorry, that has a lot to do with the quarterback. You can only run so many plays. They tried to give him a lot in 2023. He failed. And I think they kind of simplified it again. So his stats are better, but we're still not scoring any points. I feel like in Seattle, and I'm joking around about half joking. It's a conspiracy theory. They went in there. Dable goes, when they won, he's like, oh shit, I didn't think we were going to win that. I don't want to run the football anymore. So he didn't run the football against Philadelphia, and he didn't run the football against Cincinnati. Then he decided to run it against Pittsburgh. And what happened? We ran the ball effectively again. So that might be running the play. Just looking competitive. And then in these inopportune times, have these penalties, have this stupid 2-point play. I laughed when I saw that, man. I just couldn't stop laughing. I don't know, guys. I don't know what to say about this team. I honestly don't. It's a disaster. It's tough to watch, and we're probably going to lose on Sunday when we take on Washington.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll stun us, but I'm certainly not expecting a win against a 6-2 football team with the squad we have right now. I mean, our left tackle gave up 11 pressures. 11 pressures. It's
Why is
insane. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. The only positive offensively, like I said, Jones through the first 3 quarters, I actually thought played well. The running game was great, but Jones, once again, when the chips are on, when you need him most, failed.
Let me go into a different subject here. Chris, we'll start with you this time because I actually thought about doing a video on this, and I don't know if I'll have time to do it because it's time's limited. Well, whenever this World Series is over, and I hope it's not over till Saturday, but it will get me back to doing Giant stuff. Who do you think that we could trade on this team? Because we should be sellers at this point. I think we can all agree we should be sellers. You should not be buying right now. Who do you think that we can trade?
Well, we say this every year, and I just feel like the Giants never do it. But I mean, the only guy that I can recall really is Leonard Williams that we sold and got anything pretty significant for. We ended up getting
Kadarius Toney.
Oh, Tony, of course. That was kind of before the trade deadline, but yes, you're right. I'm thinking more.
And we ended up with Darren Waller, 2 terrible singers. It was great.
Yeah, great goal. How could I forget about Kadarius Toney? But yeah, with this team, I mean, I think you have to look at guys that you clearly don't think are going to be here long term, that may have some value, because you're not going to be able to trade a nonsense player for nothing.
Right.
So the 2 guys that a lot of people have said that come to mind are Darius Slayton, who I'm not in love with trading unless I'm getting at least like a 4th round pick, because I don't mind bringing Darius Slayton back next year if our receivers aren't that good. If we're being honest, like Neighbors is great. Wandell I like, but he's not a guy you could put on the outside. And obviously they don't have a lot of trust in Jalen Hyatt. So I'm not just like giving away Slayton for nothing. I think he's a solid receiver. He played well again this week. And then, of course, Ojulari. I think he's the most obvious one, right? Because of the position he plays, one of the more important positions in the sport. But I go back to that too. I'm not giving him away for peanuts. I look at it like this: if I'm Joe Shane, if I trade away Ojulari for a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick, I'm going to get that in compensation if I let him go the next year, if I don't offset it by bringing in a high price free agent, because Ojulari is going to get paid. Edge rushers get paid when they hit free agency. He's young, he's talented. When he's on the field, he produces. So I'm willing to trade those players, but I'm not trading them away for, day 3 picks. I'm getting something decent if I'm trading them, and you're probably not getting that, at least for Slayton. But outside of those 2 players, I mean, you look around this roster, obviously you're not trading the cornerstone pieces with like a Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas. Thomas, of course, is hurt anyway. Neighbors, you're not trading those guys. Wandell, not trading that guy. Daniel Jones, you couldn't trade that guy if you begged the team to take him. So I feel like those are like the 2 prominent names that come to mind that teams may be interested in, but it's got to be for the right price. I'm not just trading them to trade them.
Yeah. Adriana, what do you think?
I feel the same way. I mean, I think that Slayton is probably not going to be here next year. So if you can get something for him, that's great. I actually would keep Azeez. I think there is a concern that, like Chris said, once he hits free agency, he could make a good amount of money. Yeah. But I do feel like, with Kayvon gone, if we didn't have Azeez, forget it. I mean, we would be in rough shape there. So I think that he is a good piece to this team. And when Kayvon comes back, I would still include him in the rotation. I don't know. And maybe there are good edge rushers that are going to be coming out in the draft that we think we could replace him with. That would be my only caveat. Like, if there is someone that we can replace on a rookie deal, then by all means go for it. I just am not sure if that is going to be an option. I would think it probably is. The other thing I wanted to say, because when we were talking about the tackles thing before, don't worry, guys, because the Giants just signed 2 tackles onto their practice squad.
Great.
So now Evan Neal's 8th string at the tackle position.
Yes. So Evan Neal now is never going to get a rep at left tackle. He's probably never going to play in a game. And instead, they have signed Marcellus Johnson, who I think used to be a tackle. He's been on the team and never played. And if he has played, he hasn't been very good. And Garrett Greenfield, who, I don't know, I've never heard of him. But I don't. It's just beyond frustrating.
Maybe I heard that McDonald's is hiring burger flippers. Maybe you can go check that out. I don't know. Is it possible? I agree. I think Azeez Ojulari is probably the most tradable piece. You're probably going to get the most for him. Is it possible that Kayvon Thibodeau would be traded?
Well, he's hurt.
That I was going to say, if he wasn't on IR, I had said prior to his injury, I could see him as a trade candidate. But I don't know if someone's willing to take that risk with him being injured.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like not even so much of the trade deadline. Like next year's sake. Like to your point, Audrey, if they decided we're going to hang on to Azeez Ojulari and we're going to roll with him instead of Kayvon Thibodeau, is it possible that they do that, or they just keep it? Because obviously you want depth with edge rushers. They're a very important position. And if Azeez Ojulari ever could stay healthy and you could rotate those, I mean, you see what he can do. I mean, he's ultra talented. He's always been ultra talented. His problem is getting on the field. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, I would love Ojulari back. I just don't think it's going to happen because you look at the Jets last year with Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff is similar to Ojulari in the sense that he was a really productive situational edge rusher. He hit free agency. The Eagles gave him like $18 million. Like, how much money are you going to invest in the edge rusher position, knowing that you're probably going to have to pay Kayvon? I think they're going to attack the draft at that position. I think they'll do it relatively early. I think they'll sign an edge. But if Ojulari keeps playing well, that's why I think he's going to leave. But I look at it like I'm probably going to get more in compensation for him if I let him go than if I just trade him for a 5th or 6th round pick. So I'm not just trading him. And of course, I'd love him back, but it's got to be for the right price. And also, as far as Thibodeau goes, I don't want to trade him yet. I know, like, he hasn't been consistent enough. He's hurt, but I do feel like, especially in his rookie year, he showed glimpses of being an elite edge rusher at times. And even this year, before the injury, maybe he doesn't have the sack numbers, but I felt like he was getting consistent pressure there for 2 or 3 weeks straight. And I felt like after he came out, you started to see it impact the defensive line a bit too. So I still think Kayvon could be I'm not going to say he could be an elite player or a superstar, but I think he could be a really good edge rusher. And I don't want to give up on him.
And the reason I asked that is because next year is going to be his 4th year in the league. And then they'll have the option to pick up the 5th year. So he's going into last year of his rookie contract. And that was kind of why I asked if they decided that they wanted to choose Ojulari over Kayvon Thibodeau. But again, Ojulari's had tons of injury problems too. So you really want to give that guy a ton of money. We're in a
and plus Azeez isn't Shane's guy. Kayvon is. Right. Yeah. So it makes me think even more so he would lean towards Kayvon.
True that. Do you guys see, because I mean I've been saying this for a while. I think that after the Carolina game, I think Drew Lock is a quarterback the rest of the year.
Or DeVito, possibly.
Right. But one of those guys. Yeah. One of those guys. Adriana, do you think they replace Daniel Jones at all this year as the starter? And when do you think they do it? If you think they're going to.
I think they will. I think if he didn't have the injury clause, I think there's a bigger chance that they would just play him through the rest of the season. But I think that injury clause is really going to be a huge reason. I think Dable feels like he's limited with Jones, but in my opinion, I think part of it is the fact that they know they paid him, so he needs to be the starter. But I think they also think that he has to be better than Locke and DeVito.
Yeah.
And that's also part of the reason why he's getting more playing time. But I actually thought there was a part of me that thought with those 2 turnovers in the 4th quarter and him essentially blowing the game that he was going to bench him for the Commanders game and just be like, I've seen enough. We're halfway through the season almost at this point. It's a division rival. Like, enough is enough. But he's already said he's the starter. I would be surprised if they change it at this point. I think the same thing I don't really think that they're going to win this game on Sunday, but I think that they probably will beat the Panthers. And I think that will be his last opportunity to start. I do think that if he's playing really bad through the first half on Sunday, because it is a home game, he will get benched at the half.
Yeah, short leash.
Yeah. I think the bye is where my head has been at probably for the last 5 weeks. Like Bad Dog said earlier, that just seems like the ideal time to do it if you're going to do it. The backup quarterback gets an extra week to prepare with the first team. You sit Jones do probably in large fact to the injury clause. If they come up a win against Carolina's the last game before the bye, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
If they beat Carolina and Jones plays well, there's probably a good chance he gets the next game after the bye. But I think it'll be after the bye or very shortly thereafter. But I do think he gets the next 2 games as the starter. The only way I could see, like you were kind of saying, the only way I could see it, like he would have to bomb like the first half against Washington. Like we're down like 4 scores. And not only does he bomb, but the guy who replaces him plays well. Because then Dable could say going into next week, well, see, he played well. We're going to roll with him and see what we got. Like if he comes in and plays the way that Drew Lock does, I think the first time when they replace Jones, I think they'll probably stick with Jones for another week or 2. But I think the writing's on the wall. And I think the main reason is the injury clause more than anything. I think they have that in the back of their head.
Especially with no left tackle.
With no left tackle. I do think they think Jones is the best quarterback. Not saying much. There's not a lot of competition there. We all saw the way that Drew Lock played. DeVito's still a limited quarterback as well as he did play last year. But I think it comes down to dollars and cents. You know, when push comes to shove, with 4 or 5, 6 weeks left, they're going to say, we know we're moving off Jones. Let's pull the plug now and make sure that we don't have to further commit to him going forward.
Right. And as Louis T said, run the play.
Yeah.
Because you have, he's probably our best chance to win. But if you are 2-8, does it matter? At that point, does it matter? You say, nope. You have a perfect built-in excuse. You're 2-8 after the bye. You say, we're not winning with Daniel Jones. He's got plenty of opportunities. We want to make sure he stays healthy. I mean, you don't come out and say that, but it's obvious. And we want to see what Drew Lock can do. You know, we picked Drew Lock up. We want to see what he could do. Maybe we're looking towards next year, whatever. You know, there's reasons you can put it in there besides we're tanking. And I'll be honest, this is going to be a good, because again, I have been a Giants fan for 41 years. This is the first year I can honestly sit here and tell you that it is almost to the point. It probably is to the point, if I'm being completely honest. I don't care if they win. I won't root for them to lose, but at the same time, it's getting to the point I'm not going to root for them to win, because I'm just so sick of this vicious cycle of winning 5 games, 6 games, running it back with Daniel Jones. And the same thing happens year in and year out. We're in QB purgatory, especially when you see that they wanted a quarterback last year, were unable to get it. And you see what Williams and you see what Daniels have done for those 2 teams, and Drake May's just getting his opportunity. They beat the Jets. That's not saying much because the Jets stink. That's all. They got more problems than we do. But you see Drake May's got talent, and he didn't play the beginning of the year. So there's something to be said about, if nothing else, just, again, it's stale. Yeah. And these players are human. And when you constantly lose and lose and lose and lose, it has to, if it wears down on us as fans, it has to wear on them as just, you know what is the point? Like Tay Banks, I understand there's a human element. I'm not excusing what he did. You're a professional athlete. You should try 100% of the time. You should never come out and say that I didn't give 100% ever. That was really stupid. But I get a letdown when every week you probably go into the game going, we're not winning. We're not winning, especially when the defense is out there for 3 series. They stop and the offense does nothing. And then the defense gives up 7 points and goes, well, we just lost because we know our offense can't score touchdowns. They've scored 1 touchdown in 3 games. Yeah. I'm sorry, 2 touchdowns in 3 games. They haven't passed. Daniel Jones hasn't thrown a touchdown pass at MetLife in 2 years.
It's a disaster. It's a disaster.
It's terrible.
Being that we don't have our 4th host, let's just incorporate the chat real quick. I saw somebody ask a follow-up question off that. It was Charles Barkley, who's a great subscriber of ours. What do we do if Dable and Shane don't like any quarterbacks in this draft? That's the golden question, right? That's what everybody wants to know. Everybody's panicking. Here's my theory on that. First off, in this draft, Bad Dog, and I think the Giants are going to have a much better chance to trade up. It's not as rich of a quarterback draft class as the year before. And that's not really a slight on this class. But the last quarterback draft class was loaded. Like Caleb Williams was as an elite of a prospect as we've seen at that position at least over the last 3 or 4 years coming out. Jayden Daniels, Drake May, those guys are number 1 picks in almost any draft. They were that highly thought of. So I think there's going to be a higher probability that Giants, if they do like a quarterback, are going to be able to trade up. And you look at the teams that are more than likely going to be at the top of this draft. New England, they're not drafting a quarterback. They just took Drake May.
I honestly think New England's going to win more games than we do.
They might. But if they're ahead of us, I think they're a team that would be willing to trade out. I think the Giants will have the ability to trade up if they like a quarterback. And the other thing I'm going to say is this, and I hate saying this. The Giants may not love a quarterback in this draft, and I am so against doing this. But even if they don't love a quarterback,
their job,
they are going to draft one. They are going to convince themselves that they love one, even if they don't. Because Joe Shane will convince himself and say, one, my job's on the line. Dable's job's on the line. And I have nowhere else to turn at this point. You know, I've had 3 years to build this team. I now have that number one weapon with Malik Neighbors. I had that as a built-in excuse going into last year. The offensive line has looked at least moderately better when we're healthy this year. I've started to fix that. I can't keep telling the fan base that I need another year to keep building the team. I don't love a quarterback. So even if he doesn't love a quarterback, let me put it this way, Bad Dog. If J.J. McCarthy was the best quarterback in this year's draft class after we took Neighbors going into 2025, I think he would have taken McCarthy if we had the 6th pick in this upcoming draft. He is going to take a quarterback, even if he feels it's a slight reach. That's where I am. And I don't love that idea. I think that's dangerous. That's how we got here with Daniel Jones. But that's what I think is going to happen this week.
Well, I mean, they really overdrafted Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Like I said, 10 million people saw the way we reacted to that. We weren't happy. Oh, John, what are your thoughts on that?
I was going to say I would probably have a counter argument to that. I agree with what Bad Dog said, but what Chris said, but I don't think that they are going to reach for a quarterback because like you said, there are going to be other teams that are drafting ahead of us that don't need a quarterback. Yeah. If Jacksonville continues to suck, they just paid Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and the Chargers. Like if these teams continue to suck and, you know, we end up with a top 5 pick or whatever, I could actually see them trading back thinking like, oh, well, we can get a quarterback later and still get more draft picks. So I don't think they're going to reach. I do think they will draft a quarterback regardless. But I think when you look at all different draft classes, like I don't think any of these guys coming out are going to have the talent that Lamar Jackson had, but Lamar Jackson was picked number 32 overall. He was the last pick in the first round. So I think I make that point to say, like, I don't think that just because they're in the 6th spot or whatever they end up in, that they will be like, we have to pick a quarterback right now because we don't think that we can get one later or anything like that. Yeah. And I also think at some point, like, if they really believe, like so many people say, that Dable is that guy and he turned Josh Allen into the Josh Allen we all know and love, then you got to assume that they have some amount of faith to say that as long as they pick a quarterback that has, I don't know, whatever top 3 out of 5, who knows, whatever the couple traits are that they really love and value in a guy, that they're going to pick him regardless and trust Dable that he's going to be able to take him to that next level. Where with someone like Jones, they knew what he has. They knew he wasn't worth a 6th overall pick, and they knew that Dable was only going to be able to do so much, like he's only able to do so much with Drew Lock. And you know, I don't know what the deal with Tommy DeVito was, but he was a UDFA as opposed to like a 3rd round pick, you know?
Yeah. I didn't want to make it seem like I think they're definitely going to force a quarterback pick, but I think they're going to be able to convince themselves more easily now that they love a quarterback because they know they need one that bad. So I don't want to use the term force, but I worry that they will force it this year. Let's put it that way. In the past, I didn't think they would because they had the built-in excuse. We're still building.
Chris, they didn't do it this year. They could have taken McCarthy 6.
But next year, I think they'd be more prone to taking a quarterback like McCarthy, a guy that they like because they could convince themselves now, we've got Neighbors. We've got that elite weapon. We could get a lot out of this quarterback. So that's just where my head's at. Bottom line is I'm convinced. I don't know what quarterback it's going to be. I don't know who they're going to love. They are going to draft a quarterback, and I think they're going to trade up to get one. I don't think they're going to stand pat and just wait for the guy to get to him because there's going to be willing teams to trade back, and they're not going to mess around. They're going to show full confidence in the quarterback because they know they have to be able to sell the fan base on hope. Listen, we love Cam Ward so much that we were willing to trade a future 1st-round pick.
I love him that much.
I'm just saying. I know you do.
I'll do it.
But that's what I think is going to happen. Unless, of course, we keep losing and we have the 1st or 2nd pick. But I think we're going to trade up. I really do. If we're picking 5, 6, 7, I think we're going to trade up.
That's what I was going to ask you, Chris, is if we're picking 5th, do you think that they trade up?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's a team willing to trade back, which I think there will be.
I don't think there will be at that point. Now, there's a couple of teams I worry about. Like Adriana mentioned, Jacksonville's not doing it. Like you mentioned, New England's not doing it. I still think New England's going to win more games than we do. Jacksonville, I'm not so
Jacksonville
sure.
might. Trevor Lawrence is not very good. Well, they gave him an extension though. So
Yeah,
yeah,
he got a lot of money.
Yeah, you're right.
So
You're right.
they're stuck.
You're right.
55
Tennessee-
million a year. I mean,
Yeah.
people rip on the Jones contract, and I am not going to say that the Jones contract was good, but giving Trevor Lawrence $55 million a year is going to go down, I think, as one of the worst contracts, as it's going to come close to Deshaun Watson.
I was going to say the Watson and the Wilson one's bad too. The Russell Wilson one was
The
bad.
Dak one is bad.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Quarterback contracts in general just really bad. The
guys are
Cousins one looks really bad now with the Falcons. Like they're just bad.
Yeah.
Oh, they're winning though. At least I mean, at least they're winning games.
Yeah, but they drafted Penix the same year. Like why?
I don't know why they did that. That was weird. I
Yeah.
wish we took Michael Penix.
Well, so while we're on this subject for a second, something just popped in my head saying that like New England doesn't need a quarterback. There was a lot of talk during the preseason that Joe Milton is a very good quarterback. And you've got Michael Penix, who's a backup, and some of these other quarterbacks. I think someone in the chat mentioned Hendon Hooker. I don't think the Falcons are trading Michael Penix. I think that Kirk is going to be like Daniel Jones. It's a 4-year deal, but maybe he's going to play one more year and then he's going to get cut if they have an out, and then Michael Penix is going to play. But I wonder if, let's say, the Giants are looking at this draft class and they say, we don't like any of these guys, but maybe New England is willing to trade Joe Milton for us, because Joe Milton, who was like a 6th round pick last year, but everyone had him going earlier, things like that. Like, I wonder if they would go for something like that. I know people are talking about Stafford. I don't think they're going to do that. They're not going to pay that much money for an aging quarterback. But what if they did something like that as opposed to getting a quarterback in this year's draft class? I don't know, but I just wonder if I'm sure all options are on the table. Aside from Matt Stafford, I don't really think that's on the table for them.
I like the out-of-the-box thinking. I've always compared Joe Milton as a quarterback prospect to Happy Gilmore. He could drive the hell out of a golf ball, just like Joe Milton could throw a football 80 yards down the field. He can't do anything else. Happy Gilmore couldn't chip. He couldn't putt. That's what Joe Milton is. He's a guy that's going to win the long throw competition, but he doesn't have much else to his game. That's how I've evaluated Joe Milton when I've watched him. But I like the out-of-the-box thinking. A guy that I brought up during my live stream that I could see, you talk about veterans, obtainable veterans, because everybody throws out the, go out and get this guy. Go out. They're not available. Teams don't make quarterbacks available. So I could see one approach that the Giants going is signing a guy like Jameis Winston, for example, going out and getting a veteran who could also play with a rookie. I still think they're drafting a rookie, but I could see them getting a guy that is a legitimate guy that could step in and start for a year or start for 8 to 10 games. I think Jameis Winston is similar, not that he ever reached the heights of a Kurt Warner, but a veteran that's looking for another opportunity to reestablish his career, similar to the way that Kurt Warner did when he came to the New York Giants. I could see a player like that, kind of like what the Vikings did with Sam Darnold, a guy that they said he's going to man the fort for the rookie that we're going to draft, J.J. McCarthy. So that's a guy that I thought about. I think he's obtainable. I still think he's a decent quarterback. I don't think he's embarrassing when he's on the field. He makes a lot of stupid decisions, but a guy like that, maybe not necessarily him, but a legitimate fringe starter quarterback. I think the Giants could very well go that route and draft the first-round rookie as well.
It's weird because we had that in Tyrod Taylor. I felt like we had that in Tyrod Taylor, and obviously the Jets paid him a lot of money. The Jets are a mess. What about, there's another guy that's, I'm pretty sure he's still on the Jets, is Adrian Martinez. I like Adrian Martinez. I mean, I don't know if the Jets and Giants ever trade, but, you talk about Milton. Adrian Martinez is pretty good in Nebraska, and I know as a preseason, but he looks good. Like, he can run, he can do some certain things. Again, he's not your future, but if you're talking about those quarterbacks that are kind of fringe bridge quarterbacks that aren't going to cost a lot of money, maybe that's somebody they can look at. But I think the Giants have got to go quarterback, and
they have to.
This game against Carolina, it's ridiculous to say it, but this really could be for a draft pick.
It's going to be the commitment.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that, Audriana, because I was thinking that today. I'm like, that game's kind of like that. We made out because we didn't get Chase Young. He's obviously been all over the place. But then I'm thinking to myself, Andrew Thomas is great, but Andrew Thomas can't stay healthy. Neither one of them have really lived up to their potential. Andrew Thomas does when he's healthy, but that's just a massive if. He's never healthy. So this is what I was going to ask you. When you go in, say we lose to Washington, which they should beat us pretty handily. They're a really good team. They're 6-2. Their defense is playing much better. Their offense is really good. They got 2 really good running backs in Eckler and Robinson. They got Terry McLaurin. Zach Ertz is playing really well. They're rolling. They're a good team. We are not. You get to Carolina, you're 2-7. How are you rooting in that game?
You asking me?
Well, I'm going to be there, so
I'll say, what do you think the fan base is rooting for in that game?
They're rooting to lose. I think over at least 50-50 rooting to lose. I wouldn't say 90-10 rooting to lose, but at least 50-50. My mindset is going to remain the same as it always has.
We're going to lose that game, by the way.
We might. My mindset is it's gonna start with World War III, by the way. Like Germany's not gonna be happy seeing those two football teams coming over.
Don't forget MGK is the halftime performer. There's karma for Germany. Sorry, guys. This is just
all kidding aside, though, like I have the same mindset when it comes to being in this situation. Is I get to a point, I'm not gonna root for my team to lose. It's just not me. I don't fault anybody for doing that. I understand everybody's heart's in the same place, and the people that want to lose are thinking long-term. They're like, I love this team. I think what's in the best long-term interest of this team is to lose this game so we get a higher draft pick. It's useless to win games at this point. My mindset is I have no control over it. I'm not going to get bent out of shape if a team is trying to win, and I know they're going to try to win. Tanking in the NFL does not exist unless it's like the last week or two, because at the end of the day, Dable knows his job's on the line. The players know they're playing for contracts. So they're not going to go out there and intentionally look shitty and try to lose a football game. It's not going to happen, especially with 7 or 8 weeks to go in the season. So my mindset has always been, people have asked me this for 6 years, 7 years, however long I've been on YouTube, because we've been in this situation, unfortunately, way too many times.
Yeah, way too much.
They ask me, are you rooting for a loss? I say no. I'm going to root for the team to do well because I know they're trying to win. I know that they're working their asses off every week to try to win. And I know I have no control over it. But at the same time, maybe not.
Yeah, are they?
Maybe not. But at the same time, if they lose, I'll know in the back of my head, well, yeah, there's a benefit to it. There's a good chance. So it's like, I'm not going to be upset if they lose. I'm not going to be like devastated. I'll be devastated at times from within the game. Like last week, like the 2-point conversion call, I was furious. I was like, how do you call that? Or when they ran into our punter, they literally tackled him like a tackle dummy. I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
And we got called for illegal formation.
Illegal formation, yeah. So from within the game, I'm going to get upset. But at the end of the game, when I let it digest, I'm going to say, okay, well, at least we're going to get a higher draft pick. That's just the way I approach this scenario. Is I'm not going to root for my team to lose. I'm just not going to do it. But I'm also going to recognize that there's a benefit if they do.
Right.
I feel the same way. I think the Carolina game will be the last game that I want to see them win because, first of all, I don't think they have a chance of winning any other games for the rest of the schedule.
Maybe the Saints. The Saints are pretty bad. Maybe the Saints.
Yeah. Those are the only chances that they have, I think. So if they win the 2 of those and we go 4-13, fine. I think we're probably still ending up with a pretty good draft pick at that point. But also, I forget what I was going to say, but out of all the games I don't really want to lose, it's the Panthers game, because how pathetic and embarrassing is it if we lose to the Panthers? I can deal with losing to the other teams. The Steelers are a good football team. Some of the other teams, fine. If we lose to the Eagles, the Cowboys, whatever, it's what else is new? There's no surprise there. But if we lose to the Panthers, I just think it's another level of embarrassment. And I worry that if that game too, if it goes especially bad, then I think it's going to get way worse for Dable, and we've still got a lot of the season left.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, all right, we can lose the rest of the games because we'll get a better draft pick. It's fine for the future. I'm with Chris. I'm not going to root for them to lose, but if they lose, I'll be like, yeah, whatever. It's fine. It is what it is.
That's at the beginning. I can't openly root for them to lose, but if they do, like Chris said, I see the benefit of just, like I said, just flush it. Especially if you lose to Carolina, you might as well just.
I'm gonna tell you this. We all talk about how we want Dable back, and I'm being fair and trying to be objective with this because I don't think Dable's doing a good job this year. I'm gonna be completely honest, and I want him back. If they lose to Carolina, I think Dable's gonna get fired.
You think he gets fired that week?
Not that week, but I don't think he's the head coach the next year. Like, if you're going to lose to Carolina, you probably don't win another game on your schedule. And I know Mara said what he said, but could you imagine the pressure?
Mara also said that about Joe Judge, and 2 days later,
yeah,
he's
exactly.
Yes.
Could you imagine the pressure if the Giants win 2 games all year and they lose their last 12? Like, you fired the DC last year, you demoted the OC. Where do you point the finger? How do you, So I don't think Dable's back if they lose to Carolina, if I'm being honest. So that's a big game for him. So
does Shane come back if they lose?
Yeah, I think Shane's back.
Yeah, I agree. I think Shane is completely fine.
Yeah.
So, okay. So say that they do get rid of Brian Dable. What do they do with Bowen? Like they literally just got him here. Can you piece that together and just bring in a new coach? Would you promote Bowen to head coach? Like how would that work?
I think you'd look.
I would do Kafka.
Yeah.
Kafka?
For the rest of the season, not long term.
I don't think I think it'd be
okay.
Yeah.
But everybody wants Belichick. Like this is the one I always hear. Do you think there's any way? I don't personally think there's any way Belichick.
I don't think there's any chance.
The guy's like twice my age, and
I'll never say no chance, but I it's not what I want. Like to me, it has Phil Jackson to the Knicks all over it. Like Knicks fans were so excited when the Knicks got Phil Jackson because they're like, oh, look at all the credentials. He won, like a combined 7 or whatever, 9 championships between the Lakers and the Bulls. He's a former Knick. He was old. He was done. He was past his prime. I feel like it would be the same thing with Belichick. Like, I stay away. I'd rather a younger coach if they're gonna, and I don't want to replace David, but if they do, I don't want Belichick.
Yeah. I don't want Belichick. I don't think he's the answer. I think the people acting like he's going to come save this franchise is like, I understand the great history and what he did for us, but it's like the Gettleman thing and the Jason Garrett all over again. Just because they worked for the Giants at one point and had some success doesn't mean that all of these years and decades later, they're going to come back and have the same success, first of all. Second of all, towards the end of Belichick's career, when he lost Brady, he sucked. Didn't do a good job drafting either. Number 3, he's old as hell. He's 74. He's dating a 24-year-old. He's on the Manning cast once a week. He's got a show with Peyton Manning. He's living his life. Like, I'm not under the impression that he's dying to come back.
Like, you know what it reminds me of? Remember our Giants fans for years. And it's funny because Tom Coughlin was the coach the entire time, and half the Giants fan base was like, get rid of Coughlin and get Bill Cowher. For years, Giants fans were like drooling over the fact of Bill Cowher. I feel like it's the same thing with Belichick. It's like he's old, he's in a cushy position like Cowher is, doing the game stuff, whatever it is. Same thing with Belichick. I think it's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen, and I don't want it to. The guy that I would have died for, and I've been saying this for years,
Harbaugh.
Love Harbaugh to death, and I'm pissed off that he went to the Chargers. I think he'd be a great head coach, but I don't have the answer. I mean, one guy that comes to my mind that I would want if the Giants did fire Dable, which again I don't hope happens, but I would look at what's his name, Vrabel. I think Vrabel would be a good candidate.
That's what I was thinking too. And he knows Shane Bowen. They work together. They have that relationship already. I think from the people that I know who are going to be out there, Vrabel is one of them. That I feel like he would be a good option. I don't know if I'd be like dying to have him as my number 1, but if they had to get a new coach, I feel like I could see him working out here.
Yeah. Doesn't it suck that we're not even on Halloween and we have to talk about firing coaches and drafting quarterbacks? And can't we ever just, I mean, I know this show is relatively new. By the way, if you haven't done so, you got to like the show, subscribe, share it out with your friends, because this is going to be a once a week thing, obviously. But Chris and I have done a show together for 7 years now, and we've had one good year. And it's just like it seems like every year Giants fans are talking about the draft in October. And it gets tiring after a while. That's why I say we may not agree on everything, but the Giants fan base is, in my opinion, the best fan base on YouTube, because they're always there. They're always supporting it, no matter what. And I'm guilty of this all the time. I don't care. I'm not watching them anymore. I'm not there every time they're in the chat. I'm done with this team. I'm not watching it again. See you next week, guys. That's the way it is, right? I'm done. I've had it. I can't watch it no more. The hell with it. I want my 3 hours and every Sunday. Let's see how they lose this week. What can we make fun of this week? So it's just Giants fans. It certainly has been a rough stretch of football, long stretch. And I feel bad for, younger people that are in high school or they're just beginning college and they've never seen a good Giants football team. Me being an old ass guy, I've seen them all, and it's very special when your team wins. So I just want that for younger people that haven't experienced a good Giants team. It's going to happen eventually, but every time we think we're turning a corner, we go around the corner and we run right into a wall. And I don't know what the hell, or you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a train. That's the Giants. And again, I want Dable back, but to you guys' point, if we're 3-14 and those players quit,
it's not a lock. It's not a lock.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Because at that point, Shane's going to think about preserving his job. And
I mean,
like, so I don't want it to happen, but be honest with yourself. How many Vrabel's a perfect example. Like Vrabel with the Titans, he got that team to an AFC championship game with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Like he had them in the playoffs like pretty consistently. He had 2 bad years in a row. He was gone. That's the NFL. Like it's hard to survive. Eric Mangini, I think he's a perfect comparison to not as an X's and O's guys, but in terms of the immediate surprising success he had as the Jets coach his first year, much like Brian Dable. Like everyone was calling him man genius. They were saying he should win coach of the year.
Right.
Two bad years in a row, gone. So like everybody just assumes Dable's definitely coming back. I've said from the beginning of the year, I don't think it's a lock. I've seen way too much unexpected firings, especially in recent history with the New York Giants. So if the Giants go out and lose to Carolina and they don't win another game this year, I'd be leaning towards this, that we're going to be replacing the coach because they're going to have to point the finger somewhere.
Yeah. But I have a question for you guys, because now that I'm thinking about this, and I don't think Mara is stubborn enough to do this. I think he is, like he said, he wants to be patient, but he can be emotional, etc. Is there any chance, let's just hypothetically speaking, say that they beat the Panthers, but then they go 3-14.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that Mara keeps Dable, even if the end of the season gets a little shaky, they only win 3 games, the team's not looking that great towards the end of the year? Does Mara keep him just because he thinks I got to see him with his own quarterback?
I hope.
Maybe I fired the other guys too soon. Like, is there any chance that he says, all right, well, I learned my lesson and now I'm going to be patient, and, there's some issues with the locker room, but we're going to get some new guys in here next year. We're going to get a new quarterback and that's going to change things. Let's keep him.
I hope, because the one thing I always think about when people are always, and I get it, everybody's emotional. The team's been awful for, like, I'm never going to fault the fan. Being like, just scrap everything. It's awful. It's still awful. It's not getting better. Like it's awful. But the way I look at it is I always think about it from who are you going to replace the guy with? And if you show Dable the door after 3 years with the situation he's been put in, never got to draft his quarterback. He's had his left tackle missed the last 2 years, basically, the most important player on the offense. It was a disaster last year with all the injuries. The team never really had much of a chance.
Right. They let their best offensive player walk in free agency.
So if you fire Dable, do you really look attractive to the head coach, the potential coaching candidates that are out there? Are you going to get a guy like a Harbaugh, like the Chargers were able to get?
Maybe Chris, if they knew that they had a say in drafting the quarterback, maybe that is an attractive.
Maybe.
Also, the grass isn't greener. I mean, we've gone through 3 different coaches now, and we're on the 3rd one, and we're like, or at the 4th one at this point after McAdoo, and we're all like, we don't really know if he's the guy. So what if they fire Dable and end up bringing someone else? There's no guarantee that guy is going to be better than all of the rest of the coaches that we have all dealt with.
I don't think, and this isn't like a quarterback class like last year where it was like Caleb Williams slam dunk, Jayden Daniels. I don't feel like these quarterbacks are viewed that way. I don't think that the Giants would be a dream job if you were to fire Dable, because they would look at it and be like, well, wait a second. You gave your last 3 head coaches before Dable 2 years, and then you gave Dable 3, and he never got a chance to draft his quarterback. Like, I'm not running to that job. If I'm Vrabel, I'm like, I'll check out somewhere else. Whoever the most popular head coach is. So that's the other way that I look at it when I think about should they fire the coach. Well, who's going to be screaming to come here? Of course, you'll find somebody. There's only 32 head coaching jobs in the NFL, but are you going to get the guy that you want? And
right, good point.
I don't think it would be a wise decision,
because when we got Joe Judge, I remember, Matt Rule was not that he ended up being any damn good either, but that was the guy everybody coveted. Everybody coveted Matt Rule, and he ended up sucking. But he decided he wasn't going to come here, and we ended up with Joe Judge, who again I was. For 1 year, man, he sold me the snake oil, boy. I was all in. And the very next year, I was all the first game. I was all out. And I always say, hey, man, thanks to Joe Judge. I had some of the best content I ever put forward on YouTube. Some of the funniest stuff I ever could. It was because of him. Because I just don't know. Like, what's that?
You got to write him a thank you note.
I know. I got to send him a case of Coors Light. I think that maybe that'll help him out. That's the only thing. Joe Judge is really bad taste in beer. I ain't drinking Coors Light. The hell's the matter with Joe Judge? But this is the thing. I agree. I don't care what the record is. I really do. And I know Dable's had a tough year. But again, you have to play the cards you're dealt. You got to play the hand you're dealt. He hasn't had a great hand. He's, been hampered. He's playing, whatever it is, 5-card draw, and he has to hold on to this deuce all the time, which is his quarterback. And that's like he's got 2 bad cards he has to hold every time. And that's quarterback. So 40% of it, I would say, is Daniel Jones' fault, maybe 60% of it. But I don't feel like he can do the things he wants to do as an offensive play caller or a head coach because the quarterback, and I don't know what I don't think they really get along. I just don't. I don't think that relationship is there. I don't think I'm not saying he thinks Daniel Jones is a terrible person and he doesn't get along with it, but he's not sold on Daniel Jones. And I feel like it's hard to have confidence in him. Jones doesn't have confidence in himself. And it just ends up with a really bad product. And I think that's, to Chris's point, yes, I think that they're going to, I don't want to say force, but they may reach because, again, jobs are on the line. You can't go forward with this. This is not working. It's been 6 years. He's had 3 head coaches.
Yeah.
And every
that's just the way that I view it is if it was the same circumstance in last year's draft, this upcoming draft, I think they would take McCarthy or take Penix.
Right.
Last year, they didn't do it because they were like, we need to keep building. We need another number 1 weapon. We still are committed to Daniel Jones for another year. We don't have the ability to cut him.
Yeah.
Well, if you consider that a reach, which I would have last year, even though I actually liked McCarthy, but I didn't like him that much, I would have considered that a reach. I think they would take a quarterback like that if they had the 6th pick in this upcoming draft.
I think they're going to because I think a lot of the quarterbacks I think Cameron Ward's better than McCarthy, but I think the rest of them are maybe that level. But the thing with McCarthy that scared me the most was perfect situation.
Yeah, he had a great situation.
That's not happening here. You're not coming into a perfect situation. So I don't know. It's a shitty predicament to be in, and we're in it every year. Yeah. And if we go 3-14, it might be tough to sell the fan base on Brian Dable coming back for another year, but they're the ones in the building. They're the ones that are running the team.
I'm still leaning he's coming back. I'm not saying it's 100%. Because I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think you also got to feel like the fans who are on the fence about it, I feel like give them the chance to get a quarterback. Like Bad Dog said, he's been handcuffed to Daniel Jones for the last 3 years, and he's only been able to do so much. He was able to bring out a good side of him in 2022. Last year, he could do so much, and then he gets injured. And then this year, it is what it is. He can't run the full offense that he wants to run with Daniel Jones. So I think, for the people who are like any quarterback is better than Daniel Jones, then you got to feel like, let's get whoever Dable and Shane love in the building and let's see what Dable can do with him. Because chances are all of those quarterbacks that are coming out in the draft are better than Daniel Jones.
And they give the fan base hope. They give the fan base hope. And in reality, when you're a general manager in the NFL, that's a big part of your job.
Yeah, without question. And not just the fan base, you would probably think you'd give the team some hope going forward.
Yeah.
So. But with that said, guys and girls, we're going to wrap this edition up. We appreciate you all being here. Again, if you haven't done so, hit the like, subscribe, ring the bell. Next week, we'll be back probably at 8 o'clock because obviously I have to do the Yankee game. That's why we did it at 7 o'clock today. Anthony should be back hopefully by then. I think he'll recover unless he just gets sick from watching us play.
He might see the Giants again on Sunday. It could
yeah. So I don't know, but you guys have a great night. Adriana, Chris, always appreciate you guys doing this. And Giants fans, hang in there. Chin up, it gets worse. We'll see you next week. Take care. We out. Peace.